Hello, this is Claus Jensen presenting yet another game from round 7 of Tat Steel Chess 2011. This time you're about to watch Nakamura versus home favorite Jan Smeets. Nakamura is white, and I will run through the first 20 moves very quickly, as it's a very theoretical line in the Semislav, which was also played in the round 2 game Giri versus Smeets. So the game starts d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, e6, bishop g5, d takes c4, e4, b5, e5, h6, bishop h4, g5, knight takes g5, h takes g5, pawns, piece sack, bishop takes g5, knight bd7, g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, queen b6, and now white takes the piece back, e takes f6, c5, d5, castling queenside, castling kingside, b4, knight a4, queen b5, a3, e takes d5, a takes b4, c takes b4, bishop f4, bishop h6. And these moves were also played in round 2, Giri versus Smeets, and Smeets has only spent a few minutes on the clock to play the first 19 opening moves here. But now, in round 2, Giri played bishop d6, with the idea of exchanging bishops on e7 rather than f4 or h6. So after bishop f8, bishop e7 followed, and bishop takes and f takes e7. And this game was a draw in the end. But Nakamura has another idea in this position. He plays queen d2, and then followed bishop takes f4 and queen takes f4. And having the pawn on f6 rather than e7 looks interesting. Clearly e7 is a square that is now useful for white to enter the 7th rank. Bishop c6 followed, queen d4, and now the computer says it's better to defend the pawn on a7 with king b7 rather than king b8. But king b8 was the move that Smeets played. Rook f to e1, rook h to e8. And the computer now likes queen f4 check, king c8, rook e7, rook takes, f takes, rook e8, queen d6, which is indeed looking unpleasant for black. But Nakamura instead played the highly interesting move rook e7, which is in fact, at least momentarily, sacking the knight on a4, because now Smeets can play queen a5. Note here that rook takes e7, f takes, rook e8, queen f4 check would lead to the same position, almost same position as we saw before. The queen is now hitting f7 and could also go to d6 with a very good position. So queen a5 is the right move from Smeets, and rook takes f7 here. Very interesting play from Nakamura. Bishop takes a4, takes the piece, of course, and after bishop takes d5, it's difficult for Smeets to hold on to the pinned bishop on a4, but he gives it a try. And meanwhile, all Nakamura's kingside pawns are beginning to look more and more dangerous. But queen c5 followed, and here Nakamura cannot play queen takes c5, because then knight takes c5 and he defends the bishop on a4. So queen f4 check instead. And this is one of the reasons why king b7 would have been better than king b8 earlier in the game. Knight e5 to block the check, bishop e4 to remove the bishop from attacks, rook d7. And if rook d7 here, then bishop takes d7 would leave Smeets with chances because of the extra piece. So instead Nakamura plays rook g7. And now Smeets can save the bishop with bishop b5, and so he does. But after rook takes d7, bishop takes d7, and bishop g6, the attacker, the defender of the knight on e5 is now attacked by the bishop. And Smeets cannot defend the knight with rook e6, because he has to keep an eye on the 8th rank, because now would follow f7, and this would be winning for white. So he has to play rook f8 instead. And then rook e1 is winning the knight on e5 because it cannot move. It's pinned to the king. And again, we see the problem of having played king b8 rather than king b7 earlier in the game. Queen d6, sorry, and queen takes e5. And now Smeets can at least get rid of this f6 pawn in the process, and he's only a pawn down, and his pawns are closer to promotion than Nakamura's, so perhaps there is some hope for Smeets. Rook takes f6. Queen exchange on d6, and bishop f7, attacking the pawn on c4. Rook d2, and Nakamura takes on c4, and Smeets takes on b2, and h4, of course. Nakamura starts moving his most important asset in the endgame, his 3 connected kingside pawns. Bishop g4 followed, and we now have this very interesting endgame with rook and bishop against rook and bishop, and Nakamura has 3 pawns on the king side, and Smeets has 2 pawns on the queen side. And Smeets' b pawn has advanced further than Nakamura's pawns. An idea here was bishop f7, planning h5 next. And if, for example, a5, h5, I think black would have a chance, a4, h6, bishop f5, but in any case it's quite a complicated endgame. Nakamura played king g2 here. And of course Smeets wants to push his pawns, and he plays a5 here. But the problem is that they will be difficult to defend, and Nakamura attacks the a pawn immediately, rook e5. Rook c2 follows, and again bishop f7 was possible here, because after a4, rook b5 check, then white wins the b4 pawn. But rook b5 check followed instead, and king c7, bishop d5, rook d2, bishop f7, bishop d7, and rook takes a5. There goes another pawn for Smeets, and he's now in trouble, of course, but still there are some chances. Bishop c6 check, king f1, and bishop f3. And now the threat is, of course, rook d1 checkmate, so rook a1 followed. King d6, bishop b3, and in this position I think the best chance for Smeets was to keep his rook on the 2nd rank and keep control of the b file. So rook b2 seems to be the right move here. Bishop c4, rook c2, bishop g8, rook b2 would make it quite difficult still for Nakamura to win. But in the game he played rook d3 instead. Then came rook b1 and king c5, and Smeets should surely try to keep the bishops on the board, but he has played most of the game in time trouble, and after Nakamura's king e1 he plays king b5, and this is a mistake. Better was to play rook d8, because now bishop d1 could be met by rook e8 check. But he plays king b5, and the problem now is that after Nakamura's bishop d1. Then Smeets' rook and king are on the same diagonal, and this is forcing an exchange of bishops. So bishop takes d1, rook takes d1, and after this trade of bishops, the endgame is now academic, because Nakamura can at any time give up his rook for this pawn, and then he will have 3 connected pawns against the rook, and this will surely be winning. So rook c3, h5, b3, king d2, rook c8. Another possibility was perhaps to play rook c2 check, king e3, b2, and then rook b1. And again, Nakamura could give up the rook for the pawn at some point. Rook c8 followed instead, rook c1, rook f8, f4, king b4, rook h1, king a3, king e3, b2, g4, rook c8, and now the rook has to go back to b1, and after king a2, then Nakamura gives up his rook, and now the king is also so far away that there's no problem for white to win this game. And after g5, Smeets resigned the game. It is impossible to stop the 3 pawns with only a rook. So this was a very good win for Nakamura, who played an interesting idea against Smeets' pet line in the semi-Slav. And Nakamura may have missed a few opportunities to win easier. At least that's what the computers say, but he reached an endgame with good practical chances of winning, and so he did. And Nakamura is now leading the tournament with an impressive 5.5 of 7 score. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you on my blog at klausjensen.com. Bye bye for now.